Pre-show quid pro quo. Simon, you get to ask me any question in the world. It can be what I had for breakfast. It can be about magic. It could be a somewhat personal question. Go ahead. You get one question.
Tell me about, or would you, as a question, tell me about the first real experience you had kissing someone.
That is super easy because it was my 18th birthday, and I was in drama class, and there was a girl in drama class that quite liked me. And for my 18th birthday, she took me behind one of these fire escape doors, and we sucked face. And I'm a late bloomer as far as this kind of stuff.
This was a gift.
Yeah, I was a late bloomer as far as this kind of stuff is concerned. I mean,
Amazing.
That was my first literal intimate kiss with somebody. It was on my 18th birthday.
Wow.
I got a little present.
Wow.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to What Magic Is This? A podcast that your mother would be horrified that you listen to about the occult, the esoteric, the paranormal, the supernatural, and the weird. You like that? Have another sip of wine.
Oh, I'm in the right place.
You are. So this is a topic-based podcast, and I send out a bunch of topics to people, and they get to pick one, and it's whatever they're most curious about. And I knew that you were going to pick this topic before I sent it to you. A part of me didn't even want to send you the list because it was like, I know which ones he's going to pick. So, and it came to pass, and it was a zero surprise for me, absolutely zero surprise. So,
Really? Wow. Okay.
yeah, your topic was spells.
Yeah.
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 I want to kick this off by asking you a question. Now, this isn't part of the quid pro quo, but what comes to your mind with the idea of spells or spell casting?
What first comes to mind is an incantation, words or something being said to have an effect on the natural world through a spiritual process, I guess.
No, that's
For instance, anyway, that's what I know.
That's pretty. That's actually pretty good. When you first picked this topic, I was a bit trepidatious because it's such a broad. It's such a broad topic, spells. And I didn't include a Wikipedia link when I sent you the email of the topics because of this very reason. It's so broad. This could either be the longest episode I will ever record, or it could be the shortest. I've made sure that it's going to be at least a good length. So you're pretty correct. So I pulled out my Watkins Dictionary of Magic, and I looked up spell.
Okay.
And this is the definition they go for. An incantation, bing, or invocation performed by a witch, wizard, or magician, which is believed to have a tangible outcome for either good or evil. Spells can be a form of absent healing or can be used to inflict harm on a person or property. Now, that definition is a bit too specific for me. But what I will say in a somewhat general sense, that spells are the practical aspects of magic. Spells are the cornerstone of enchantment of this world and hopefully your world. There's a famous book that every magician has. It's called The Brick. It's written by Aleister Crowley, and it's huge. It's an enormous book. It's a couple $100 or at least $100.
Good Lord.
And and on the side of it just says magic, but magic with a K.
Okay.
Anyways, part 3 of that book is a book called Magic in Theory and Practice. Spells would be the latter part of that. It's the practice part of magic, right? And the techniques used, the technical aspects of magic. That's what I would consider spells.
Right. Okay.
Peter Carroll, one of the founders of Chaos Magic, put it quite eloquently, actually, when he said that magic works in practice, not in theory. Yeah, and I like that quite a bit. With Crowley, there's even more things that he said. I'm not going to just keep droning on about him, but he once remarked that there is not much more to magic than writing about it, which I don't necessarily agree with, and we'll get into that in a little bit later. He also said something really great, and I've always loved this. He said that magic is a disease of language. Yeah, I just love that. So I'm going to get into the etymology of the word spell. So any Magic 101 or Magic for Beginners book will make the point that, to cast a spell is to merely spell, right? Just the act of spelling something out is casting a spell.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Like when you're 14 years old, it's like, whoa, mind blowing,
Right.
whoa,
Yeah.
crazy, and other such things. They'll point to something like the grimoire being like grammar, right?
Okay.
And which is not technically correct. Magicians, not technically correct. It comes from a French root, which is grammaire, which literally translate as to any book written in Latin. It didn't get attached to books of magic until at least the 18th century. So before then, it was just. But it's close, but it's not exactly a complete match. So as far as everybody knows what the definition of spell is, it has a Germanic root. It's form words by means of letters. But for our purposes, spell is Old English, has it coming from a Proto-Germanic spellum, which is to tell, or story, saying, tale, history, narrative, fable, discourse, and command, which I love. Mm-hmm. So the definition itself also doesn't have any distinction between writing and saying something audibly.
Right. Right.
So that's pretty important.
Can a spell be performed in silence?
Absolutely. Okay. I would say so.
Yeah. That's just a.
We're going to get into that because there's everybody else's definition and there's my definition.
Yeah.
So I will get into that. There's, as far as a history of spells, I can't really give one. I can go to two kind of sources, but I can't really give. Casting a spell or to do something, to think that you're going to have a tangible effect in the real world, I think is as old as we are, or at least when we became conscious, right? Thinking that you can have an effect on the world when you do something to something that you can actually that I think is kind of just what we do.
Like doing a dance and making it rain.
I'm pretty sure, and this is something that other magicians like Gordon White have commented on, that the first ritual was some form of sympathetic magic, where they were mimicking something that they saw in nature, like trees blowing in the wind, and they would probably start swaying their bodies like that. That just seems like something that even before we probably had consciousness that we would just do. But what I can do with I can go into some history. Everybody considers ancient Egypt to be the mother of wisdom and magic.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spells in the what we'd like to think of in ancient Egypt in the pharaonic period was mainly apotropaic, which means protective spells for protection. They lived in a very harsh setting in Egypt. They had horrible weather, horrible environment, lots of animals that definitely wanted them dead, snakes in the water, snakes on the land, crocodiles. So their spells were mainly just to protect themselves.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Most magicians kind of apply the god of magic for the ancient Egyptians as Thoth, the ibis-headed god that you see. He's got a bird with a long beak.
Yeah.
This is also not technically correct magicians. Heka is the god of magic, but Thoth himself, or Tahuti, or Thoth, whatever you want to call him. Anyways, he is the Lord of divine words, both spoken and written. He is the divine mind, whose creative instrument is the voice. And that was taken from Jeremy Nadler in a book called Temple of the Cosmos. It's a great book. It's just a wonderful, wonderful book. The Greeks basically made everything better. Their spells started to become more personal. They were about love, finding a lover, binding an enemy, winning in court, that kind of thing. They also provided the kind of parts to a spell. So you have praxis, which means action, transaction, or exercise. You have pragmatia, which is operation. You have oikonomia, management or magical plan. Laban, which is taking ingredients or assembling ingredients at the start of a magical procedure. Yeah, and they really up the game for magic in a great way. And also, as Greeks do, you kind of had your first magical skeptic. There was a Greek called Gorgias, who is arguably the first individual to make a few observations about the magic that he saw about him and the spells being used at that time. He was a bit skeptical of magic, calling it errors and deceptions of the soul in his book, The Encomium of Helen. This is 2 episodes in a row where I've talked about Helen of Troy. She's just come up, so there might be something to this stuff. But he was skeptical, but he was very aware of speech and words when used together and how they can cast a spell. Even he, at this early point, while being skeptical, knew that this was somehow very, very important. So spells, writing, incantations, they go together, and there's many books of spells. One of my favorites is a book called The Greek Magical Papyri. It's a collection of spells from about 100 BC to about 400 AD. The translator who did it, his name is Hans-Dieter Betz, he kind of muddies the water and also brings up the difficulty with the word spell, because every part of his translation just has it listed as a spell, and it becomes just an amorphous mass. It's just everything's a spell. Is it divination? Spell. Is it scrying? It's a spell. Is it trying to get a dream? It's a spell for a dream. But the Greek magical papyri is for my money the birthplace of modern magic. And what's interesting about these books of spells, if you ever go through them, is the fact that they're kind of showing you at the time what was important to them. And each era as it goes, you'll see by the amount of certain spells in their categories what mattered to these people. Again, in Egypt, it's about protection. 15th, 16th century, a lot of it was love spells. What would you think would be the spell up on the top of the list right now, modern day?
Modern day?
Yeah.
I would say, I don't think love ever goes out of fashion.
No, it doesn't.
But money.
Money, correct.
Is money?
Money.
Yeah.
Root of all evil.
Yeah. It kind of wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah,
Okay.
money. Yeah. Things like The Secret and whatnot. A lot of new thought books coming out. Yeah, it's
Positive thinking, positive affirmations is all about success.
if I can think in my mind, I can
Yeah.
get this to actually happen.
Yeah.
But the question is asked, well, then what isn't a spell, right? If spell can be anything, what isn't a spell? There's some magicians go back and forth. Is divination, using tarot cards, looking at the future, is that a spell? One of my favorite magicians and writers, his name is Dr. Stephen Skinner. He says divination is definitely not a spell. It's more passive, whereas casting a spell is more proactive.
How do you feel about that?
I'm going to tell you how I feel. This is where I draw the line. I go back to the root of the word spellum, which, as you can remember, is to tell, or story,
Right.
history,
Story, history,
fable.
yeah.
So I'm going to give you 2 situations and tell me which one you think would be a spell. You're in a market. There happens to be a little boutique there that's selling candles. You buy a Santa Muerte or Saint Death candle. You bring it back home and you light it. And maybe you take a picture and put it on Instagram. That's one situation.
Okay.
Second situation is you're having a bad time in life. You're not mentally in the best place. You're not feeling good. You go to a store and buy a purple candle, knowing for a fact that purple to her represents mental health, psychology. So you put it out. And as you're lighting it, you say a small prayer to La Flaquita and put out some slices of apple because you know she likes them. You put out a dish of spring water because spring water comes from the ground. The ground is where the way of all flesh goes. Which of those 2 situations do you think would be a spell?
The second one.
Correct. Spirits and the entities that magicians work with fucking love stories. So, my definition of a spell, again, goes back to that root. If it's a story, if it's something that you would write in your magical journal, then I could consider it a spell. Some forms of divination, if you put enough effort into it, I think can be spells. Absolutely. So I'm a little less bound by what people define as being a spell. There's a book called Advanced Magic for Beginners by Alan Chapman, and I can't actually recommend the book. It won't be included in the show notes, but if it's something that people want to check out, they can. He actually has something in there that is quite good as to explaining the process of spellcasting. Part 1 is decide what you want to occur. Part 2, ensure that what you want to occur has a means of manifestation. Part 3, choose an experience. Part 4, decide that the experience means the same thing as what you want to occur. Part 5, perform the act / undergo the experience. Part 5, look at the results. Okay?
Okay.
Is there any part of that that's unclear?
No, I think that seems to be a lot about safety.
Yeah.
Like making sure that you make sure you're asking for what you really want.
When he uses experience, that is how you want to cast the spell, like through what means, through what rituals, through what incantations, through what evocations, invocations, etc., etc. That's the process of casting a spell, and it's the best part of that book. And as much as I've tried to find a better explanation elsewhere, I can't. So he nails it there, and I hope that he's doing well, because he's kind of just disappeared. Anyways, the process itself also brings up something interesting in the respect that is creating art a spell, and I say certainly. It certainly is, if you want it to be. And I'll use an example. It's an example that people like Alan Moore have used. In a way, art can almost be more effective than spellcasting. And so, think in your mind, picture Napoleon Bonaparte. You got him?
Yeah.
All right. Now picture him standing next to somebody. Okay.
Yeah.
You got it? What did you see?
The first images of a short man.
Correct.
Yeah, but I actually also know he was 5'7", which was average.
And everybody knows this information.
Yeah.
But first thing that came to your mind is that he's a small man.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Now, this comes from the fact that Gil Ray, who was a cartoonist at the time, he did a cartoon of Napoleon Bonaparte in a room where he'd overturned all the furniture, and the furniture actually looks quite large compared to who he is. And for some reason, something about that stuck, and henceforth he kept having Napoleon Bonaparte being a short man. He would have George III holding him in the palm of his hand.
It's kind of propaganda, right?
Correct, yeah. Correct. And a couple of weeks before he died, he was heard to remark that it wasn't the English Empire that killed him; it was Gil Ray. And but do you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah,
here?
Yeah.
So something like that, the idea of a short man that wants to conquer the world, and picturing that and creating that in art is almost more powerful than some spells. Some you might do something bad to somebody and that person curses you, and your child might get born with, I don't know, a birth defect, etc., etc. Or an artist could create a really great satire, and that satire will live on for generations and generations, and it might not ever die. And that is a great fucking spell. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. But it also makes me think about other things that we have come to believe that are actually that we come to believe are absolutely true, like lie detectors, and how they don't work. If you're in a cell and there's bars on the door, and you've just been handcuffed, and then you're sat in a chair, and then they plug you into something, and then they tell you that they're going to ask you questions,
right.
And the little machine will tell you if they're lying or not. But we, as it's a thing, and it comes up all the time in art and movies and TV and books that he took a lie detector test and it proves it's true, or took a lie detector test, he's obviously innocent. It's a thing that we think of, and just to say that ingrained like you said, this Napoleon thing, like it's the first image that I like. Even though I know, I literally know that he wasn't a short man. Then he was average, and the fact that even though I know that, the first image is a short dude.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like obviously images have power.
Yeah. If you want your art to be a spell, if you are choosing sometimes it's by choice, sometimes it just happens and you might have tapped into the subconscious, the unconscious. There's great stuff to be found there. And art, yeah, it's magic at bottom in its expression is an art. I'm on board. I say yes. I didn't know if this would fit in, but I'm going to go. Oh, sorry, I'm going to go anyways. Armchair magicians is a term that's used quite often. Armchair magicians are people that have all the books. They have the things on the shelf that skulls or alchemical vials, etc., but they just don't do spells. And are these people? Can they call themselves magicians? If this is what you think, magicians, I'm speaking to you, then what I'm about to say might piss you off a little bit. So there's this guy by the name of Eliphas Levi, or Eliphas Levi. He is basically responsible for, I would say, 70% of what constitutes Western magic now. He was an interesting cat. But he only ever did one spell. He preferred, if magic in theory and practice, he was a 99% theory, 1% practice kind of guy. He did one spell that we know of and that he talked about. He was going to performed the evocation of the ghost of Apollonius of Tyana. He fasted for a period of days. He had an altar. He had mirrors all about the room. He had a magical circle which was made out of a magnetized iron chain as a barrier against dark forces, I guess. Anyways, doesn't matter. He performed the ritual. At one point, he closed his eyes, and when he opened them up again, there was a shrouded figure standing right in front of him. And he freaked the fuck out. You can almost picture him in your mind being a bubbling, not knowing exactly what going on. So he grabs a sword, one of the magical instruments, and he points it at the figure, and he commands it to obey him. And the figure disappears. And again, like a bumbling magician, he goes, come back. The spirit did come back for a period of time, and it touched the arm that he was holding the sword in, and his arm went completely numb. He freaks out even more, closes the ritual down. Apparently his arm was numb for days afterwards, and he writes like, look, I talk about this stuff a lot, but what you got to know is that this shit is real and you have to be careful. And I'm going to continue I'm just going to continue writing about magic. I'm not going to actually perform this spell. So a guy that we get pretty much most of what people consider magic is from a dude who never really did spells. But here's the thing. I say, yes, armchair magicians are actually magicians. And in this respect, I say that the study and theorizing of magic is in itself a practice. But with a small caveat that you will have what I would call eliphasitis, in which is that you have to have pretty big balls to call yourself a magician who's never done a magic trick. You better back it up with some really, really great theory. But I love you, armchair magicians. I think you're a magician. So I want to try to get into people's minds what it feels like to cast a spell, or the whole process of going through casting a spell. And so I want people to go out and I want them to get a Bible. Not just any Bible. I want them to get what's called the Flavor Bible. It is a book by Karen Page and Andrew Dornenberg. It is not a cookbook, but it is a list of ingredients. And it tells you what goes good with those ingredients. It's a great book if you want to cook. It is my go-to cookbook. And I want everybody to get this book. Who really wants to see what it's like to cast a spell. Get this book. I want them to pick an ingredient And then I want them to pick 2 flavor matches under that ingredient. Make sure it's something that you like and something you can kind of cook. I'm kind of assuming that people have some kind of rudimentary cooking skills. Even if not, I'm assuming you know how to boil water. I'm assuming you know how to do some of these things. So anyways, get your ingredients assembled. And I want you to picture the process. I want you to picture the final product. I want you to picture the process of cooking it and going through and absolutely everything. And you really have to think about it. You're going to slip up the first couple of times. There's going to be a mistake or two along the way. That's how we learn. That is literally how we learn, is by making small mistakes. But again, you're creating a story. So the day of, I want you to assemble the ingredients. Get them all. Get them in the fridge. I want you to go to your kitchen. This is going to be your ritual space. I want you to get the ingredients out of the fridge. I want you to have everything all nice and clean. I want you to get out your pots, your pans, and I want you to prep the ingredients. If there's things that need to be cut beforehand, get them all ready. I want you to see them all in front of you. Okay, this is your ritual. It's time to go. So then you start cooking. Take it slow to begin with, but just the entire feeling that you have around you, the process of creation to get a desired result, is a very important one, and savor it. Cooks will know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm using this analogy. What do you have? You've got a result at the very end, and in this case, this is an instantaneous result. Unlike magic and spells, where they might take time or they just might not manifest. At least with this, you know that you're going to get something. You're going to get. It might not be great, but keep at it. The whole process that you go through, that is how I want people to try and understand what it's like when a magician casts a spell. That's about as close as you can get.
I want you to tell me what you do when you, like you, Doug, not magicians in general, but like what do you do when you're going to cast a spell?
It's spell dependent.
Okay.
It's spell dependent. So
let's say the most complex or moderately complex thing that you be performing.
So for me, I find that the Goetia or the grimoires to be the most efficacious form of magic. I'm going to fast for a period of days. I'm going to have my magic tools, like a knife. I've got that all prepped. It's all right. I've picked incense that's specific to the demon that I want to talk to or have command. I look at the stars and where they are and what planetary day it is, what planetary hour it is, what are the demons of that hour, what are the angels of that hour.
Okay.
Got all of that. I perform an initial invocation to either Saint Cyprian or another god, maybe an Orphic hymn. It's what I need to accomplish. I will set forth. I've got it all prepared, and I will set forth to do the actual evocation of the demon itself. I get it. I get what I need. Play around with a little bit. I always hate the expression of working. I want to work with the demon. It's like, what if you don't want to work with the demon? What if you don't want to play around with the demon? Like, why does it always have to be work? Anyways, why does it always have to be work? But you get what I'm saying.
I have an idea.
So then, once I've got that done, if it's a new demon, I will try to bind it to me. I only need to bind a demon once, right? That's it. And I can go back to him a little or her a little bit later.
Okay.
Then once that's done, I bid them goodbye. I do a small little banishing, and then, I don't know, I eat some spaghetti.
Okay.
Or
so
have
like
some tea. But
you close your ritual or whatever.
Yeah.
Is it? Are you always working with? I mean, maybe it's this very specific kind of magic. Are you always working with demons as opposed to calling on angels or the elements or
no, everything? It's all good.
Okay. I suppose it depends on the practitioner too, because part of it is, as far as I understand, it is about what you actually believe. Mm-hmm. So if you come, it's the thing about like technically to me, an armchair magician wouldn't be someone who's a magician who doesn't practice. It's someone who doesn't believe.
Right.
And then maybe that's another separation. Someone who's got the books and they have an interest, but they don't actually believe it.
Right.
And I think that the difference would be like those who believe it, but they just deal with theory, and that might be a practice in and of itself.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think it has to do with, if you don't believe, then there's no point in touching it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you're going to cast a really half-assed spell if you don't believe what you're doing.
Yes.
And I think maybe you're putting yourself in a great deal of danger, possibly, if you're like, whatever.
Right.
Let's just slap out. Let's slap out the tarot and see what happens. Like,
right.
I don't think so.
Exactly. But again, I want to reiterate that it depends on what the spell is, what the experience, again, to go back to those protocols, what the experience I want to have. It's all dependent.
What experience are you looking for? What
depends on what the outcome I want it to be. I think the parts.
No, what are the? Give me an idea of the kind of outcomes. If that's not too personal, that you're looking, that you are like, that you would cast a spell for. What's the outcome you're looking towards?
Again, dependent on what I'm casting for, but scrying, just give me visions, give me things that I haven't seen. Prove to me again that this is a real thing, that that it's not just all cold matter.
Right.
But also just to have a little bit of fun sometimes. Where do people go from here? I would say there are books. There are books to go. Judica Isles has, it's called the Element Encyclopedia of 1,000 Spells. There's also the Element Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells. They're both good. Give some of them a shot. Paul Hewson's Mastering Witchcraft is a little bit dated. If you want something a bit more contemporary, there's Peter Carroll, the gentleman I talked about a little earlier. He's got a book called the Octavo. It's good. Probably one of the best contemporary spell books that you can get, or books on magic you can get, is Gordon White's The Chaos Protocols. Fantastic book. Also Jason Miller's The Sorcerer's Secrets. For my money, though, if you want to get a spell book that you can put on the shelf that will give you the actual feeling of having a spell book in front of you, it's going to be a book by Jim Baker called The Cunning Man's Handbook. It is a fantastic book. It gives you context of the time that they were living in. It's got all these amazing spells, a bit of Goetia in there. It's a fantastic book. Highly recommended. It's a bit expensive. The book that I talked about earlier, the Greek Magical Papyri by Hans-Dieter Betz, I wouldn't suggest it for new magicians, merely due to the fact that you need a whole lot of context to go through it before you start to attempt Greco-Egyptian magic. You'll get there. You'll get there eventually. But when you finally do, holy crow, it is a fantastic, fantastic book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But for people, I can only say this. Do some cooking. Do the cooking. If I can't make a magician out of you, at least I'll make you into a competent cook. Right?
Yeah.
Right? So... And another thing is, what the fuck are people afraid of? Again, I don't get this.
Are you asking me, or
no? Just this just goes out to everybody in general. Right. Chances are that most people live a pretty prosaic life, right? Mm-hmm. Throw a bit of magic in there, right? Cast a few spells. Get out there, like, live a magical life. Create your story. This is fundamental stuff. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you that some of them will work. You will find what works best for you. Stick with it and challenge yourself. Things that you would think that you're not good at, you'll be great at. But other things that you think that you would be absolutely fantastic at, you will be utter shit. I love animals. Absolutely adore them. I am terrible at animal-based magic. I thought I would be good at it, but I am crap at it. I'm still trying, but I am shite at it. But that's the thing. The story is being written, and it's a great story. Lean into it. Go with it, and magic will surprise you. I read something recently by Jeffrey Kripal. It's a book called The Flip, and he points out that how easy it is for us to accept that everything that the quantum physicists tell us about, the magical things that electrons and protons, the very stuff that we're made of, is real, and we just nod along with it. Yep, fantastic. But that these strange, crazy things don't apply to us? That we only relegate them to superheroes and science fiction and fantasy novels? What the fuck are we afraid of? To actually just be like, no, we might have this capacity. And when you find out that you actually do, you can only go from there.
Mm-hmm.
So cast a few spells. Try them out. I'll give you a really easy one. In preparation for this episode, I was hoping that you would ask the question, what's a spell that you would suggest for anybody to try out as their first spell? And you did it. You dropped the ball, asshole.
I'm such a dick.
I thought about it for a second, and I thought to one of the first kind of spells that I did. And again, this is going to be the second time in 2 episodes this guy's come up, but his name is Robert Anton Wilson. In his book Prometheus Rising, he says basically visualize a quarter, a 25-cent piece quarter. Visualize it in your mind for a period of time, really concentrate on it, and then go onto the street. And as you're looking, still keeping the visualizing of the quarter, and visualize that you're going to find it, right? And then when you find it, take it in and say, okay, now this is merely selective attention. The only reason that I found the quarter is because I went out looking for it. And that's the only reason. And then the next time is visualize that quarter, go out and think that, no, my mind is going to find another quarter. My mind's going to create this quarter. In preparation for this show, I did this again. I was like, do I still got it? And yeah, I did a small little visualization. And I didn't actually even hold it in my mind that day. I just did it, and then I kind of forgot about it as I was at work. And yeah, about 3 hours later, quarter. So there are tricks. There is magic. Do them. Do some of them. Just give them a shot. I guarantee you will be surprised, and go with it. So that's the end of our episode.
Cool.
That's spells.
Nice.
Yeah.
Spells.
So, for those interested, people can head to whatmagicisthis.com to go to the website. You'll find several links there to previous episodes. You'll find iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and plenty of others. You'll also find my Twitter account and my Facebook account. I'm trying to get back into it. Please be patient. I'm not a huge social media fan, but I understand how important it is in this day and age. Also on the website, you'll find show notes for this episode. I'll put up some of the books that I'd mentioned. I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode, and be sure to tune in to future episodes. And now we have the post-show quid pro quo. Simon.
Yeah.
You are a Christian.
Yes.
Do you think that spells should be part of modern Christianity?
I suppose there'd be an argument for like anything that's happening right now. I mean, because there's quite a few churches that do work with very specific prayers at specific times, with very specific elements, bread and wine, and very specific,
Sacraments,
holy water, and like the blessing, like so, like these,
I love holy water.
Yeah, these sort of
it's delicious. Just kidding.
So you could argue that that's like they're performing magic up there. I'd say it's possible. At least the Christianity that I'm part of, that I practice, would say no, and mainly because the sort of the distinction was being anything that is sort of anything that's manipulative. And I don't mean that, I mean that's a negative word to use, but I suppose what I mean is that anything that tries to affect the outcome,
got it,
would sort of be considered taboo. And this, I can't speak for Christianity or Christians in general, but just to say that it's sort of like the element of sort of asking, of saying, of praying a prayer. You might please God, let this happen. I mean, but when I remember that someone, my aunt once told me, her mentor, a spiritual mentor of hers, told her the only legitimate prayer that you could pray really for another person or for yourself. Because that's the thing, is like, if I say, go God, please,
go God,
please let Doug do such and such, or make Doug like me, or make Doug leave me alone, like protect me from Doug, or whatever.
No chance.
Right. But to say instead, the only legitimate prayer for somebody else would be, Lord, let Doug know your will for him in the reality of his life today, and grant him the grace to carry it out.
Beautiful.
In this, I suppose you could argue it's a kind of, that's a spell, because it's very specific about not asking for anything but God's will to be done. Just like, sort of like looking to the higher power and saying, you know what's going on. You do it.
I will.
But like a lot of what we do, even in Christianity, is we're praying for things.
Right.
We tend to pray in a manipulative way. Make somebody do what I want. Make the thing that I want happen, as opposed to being open. It's hard to be open. That's why you had to ask that you, geez, like, grant me grace that I can know what your will is, and grant me grace that I can do it.
Right.
Anyway.
Simon?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, buddy.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
No problem. We'll talk again, I'm sure.
That'd be great.
That's the end of the episode. We'll talk at you soon.